TikTok. Welcome back to a Celtic State of Mind. It's Thursday night. I'm Paul John Dykes. I'm joined tonight by Stephen Ray and by Anthony Maguire. We're here, of course, for Europa League action. Anthony, it's Celtic versus Utrecht. It's a last league stage game of our run, and hopefully a win will see us through to the playoff. What do you make of the starting 11?
Thank you, Paul John, for having me on. Look, I've gone with the strongest team again. No Rio Hatate. He's suspended from his red cards in Bologna last week. So everyone else, theoretically available. It was due to see Kieran Tierney back fit. There was obviously a bit of a concern. He came off with what appeared to be some sort of a strain or cramp against Hearts on the weekend. So he's presumably starting at left back. Like I said, strongest team on the park. So we're going for the win. A win will definitely see us through to the next round of the Europa League. So it's 3 points. It's no injuries. And hopefully a comfortable evening with 11 men on the park. That's what I'm hoping for.
Do you think so? I mean, last couple of games, I was talking about this earlier on, Stephen. We get 2-2 draws. And coming away from that, I honestly would argue the toss with anybody that we would get a win in both games had we not seen red. Would you agree with that, Stephen?
Probably. The Bologna one, obviously they were starting to get a grip of the game. I know we scored for a set piece after we went down to 10, but I would have took a point before that game. At 2-0, I think I said last week, as long as we don't leave here defeated, I'd be relatively happy, because I just wanted to I wanted to go into tonight in our own hands effectively, and that's what we've done. A win obviously last week would have made it a lot more simpler tonight, but the Hearts game, I definitely think we would have won that game with 11 men on the park. As bad as we were, it was one of the worst games of football I can ever remember watching. I was just sitting watching it so frustrated. I kept saying to my son that this ball is it's clocking up some amount of air miles, because it was, I think, the first 2 minutes, I don't think the ball was on the grass at any one stage. It was just ridiculous, and we just resorted to some sort of hoofball. I don't know why. I don't know if it was just Martin knew the team was pretty tired, and it was just a way of saving legs and just punting up the park effectively. But I agree. I think we would have won at least one of them if we kept 11 men on the park.
The big issue I've got with what you said there, Stephen, is the fact that we were missing out the midfield. So the hoofball resulted in the midfield basically being non-existent, really, Anthony. And I think tonight, when I'm looking at this, some of the best performances I've seen from the likes of Engels has been in Europe. And also I would suggest that Rio Hatate, again, this is a wee argument I've had a ding-dong about with a few people. I thought Rio Hatate was playing pretty well against Bologna until he gets his marching orders. And Nygren's done fairly well, I think, in Europe so far this season. So that was my biggest concern. I agree with Stephen. There was a lot of long balls, and it just meant that there was no one in the midfield able to orchestrate the game, Anthony. But I don't expect the same tonight.
Yeah, look, totally different atmosphere tonight. Utrecht are out of the competition, so they're basically playing for pride and not to finish bottom. So they're joint bottom with an Israeli team and another team. So they've got pride to play for. I think their manager said that they were ringing the changes, or would likely ring the changes. So they've got quite an important league tie on the weekend. I'm expecting them just to go out and put in a competent performance. They've not conceded, not lost by too many goals. So I think the worst defeat they've had has been beat by 2 goals. So I expect it to be tight. It's not going to be, it's never going to be easy, but I don't see this being like a 3-4 goal thumping. So we're going to have to probably work at it. But to answer your question about the midfield, yes, I think there's hopefully a bit more of a game of actual football. I don't know what that was on Sunday night, but football, you just argue that it was more like header tennis and ping pong or basketball or whatever other analogy you want to use. So, I'm hoping that the likes of McGregor and Engels can get on the ball and actually dictate play, because we did not do that on Sunday night. And I think, to be fair, a certain amount of that I put down to the exertions in Bologna on Thursday night with 10 men, because you're asked in that same squad to back it up with like 2 days rest. No ability to really make any changes in that midfield. So I've got a little bit of sympathy for the midfield, because they were asked to carry a very, very high workload, and dare I say it, lack of recruitment, probably hurt us there. But I said the dirty word there. Let's not, get bogged down on that one just yet.
We might have mentioned it once or twice this week, Anthony, and I'm pretty sure a few more times as the week drags in. But on that note, when we're talking about additional games, for example, Stephen, I seen a tweet earlier from our very own Acsom Rabbani, and I share his view. I want a win. I want to stay in the tournament. I want to go as far and as deep as I possibly can. But a lot of people were disagreeing with him, saying, look, this isn't important. We need to concentrate on the league. You've got a team in Hearts who are not in Europe or in the Scottish Cup. I think if we get through one of the playoff games is maybe 2 or 3 days before we play Rangers, etc. Where do you sit in that argument, Stephen?
Europe's a priority. That's why I no longer have a season ticket. The club decided that Europe was just this thing that we enter every year and take the money and get out. I just can't buy that argument. You're basically saying you want Celtic to lose or not win by getting knocked out of Europe. It's been way too long since we've won a knockout tie. I want Martin to get through tonight and beat whoever we get next to basically end that run. I want to go as far as we can in this competition. I think it could build momentum. I think it makes players play for positions. If we want to attract players going into the future, you need to show, that you're willing to compete at all levels and not just domestically. The new guy, Big TC, he mentioned, about competing in Europe and not just domestic football and competing for domestic honours. If you're going to attract guys from Italy, Germany, Spain, France, the Scottish Premiership's just not going to cut it, unfortunately. You need to be playing in Europe. And I mean, that's why do you think Bodo Glimt are able to attract back guys that they've sold previously for big money? Because that's them 2 European semi-finals. They were in the semi-final of Conference League, semi-final of Europa League, and now they're in the playoff after beating Atletico Madrid away last night, which was just an unbelievable result. So, Europe's right up there alongside the league table. And if somebody could absolutely guarantee me winning the Europa League over the league, I would take the Europa League, because I'm still smarting for that defeat 22 years ago.
We are. Have you watched the back, Stephen? Have you ever watched?
I have actually. Obviously, because I was there in the stadium, I've seen it a few times. Yeah, it's tough to watch, but aye.
I've never watched it through, and every time I've got the absolute privilege of being in the presence of anybody who was involved, Martin and Neil included, I do ask the question, and not one of them has said that they've watched it back. But I can understand why. But on your point, Stephen, I think this is a very pertinent point. I've recorded this afternoon in Glasgow with Tony Haggerty, former Acsom favourite. And this was a discussion point, Stephen, what you've just said there in relation to European aspirations. And we talk about the board and how they see Celtic fans, and the board and how they actually see Celtic Football Club, in terms of ambition, right? And I'll give you an example. Last week, I was speaking to an agent who obviously is up to his eyeballs in it just now, as he always is in a January transfer window. And he told me that any player he has, and sometimes with regards to his agency, other agents come to him because he has this Scottish football know-how and specialism, and they'll say, we've got this player. And they kind of work together in respect to getting them in the door. And what he said to me is that at the moment, and this may change with Hearts and their kind of resurgence, if you like, he will go to Celtic, and that's because he's Celtic-minded, this individual. He will go to Celtic and offer Celtic the player. And if Celtic don't respond, or they don't come back to him, or they're not interested, he will then offer them to Rangers. And what he was explaining to me is that every agency is the same. With any player of value, they will be offered to both clubs. So what Stephen's saying here, Anthony, is spot on. If you get to January and there's a player getting offered to Celtic and Rangers this time next year, and you're still in Europe, and particularly still in the Champions League, there's only one winner, isn't there?
Absolutely. I mean, ultimately, that's where players develop. I mean, the league's bread and butter to us, because obviously the league grants you the right to then play in Europe, or the opportunity to qualify to play in Europe. So it is important. But some players will come to Celtic knowing that there's a strong likelihood that either they'll be playing European football, so whether that be Champions League or Europa League, and then coming now and saying, well, actually, you're still in the competition. Well, that's more exposure for me. It's more development for me. There's more games. So therefore, if I'm a fringe player or I'm not a first pick, there's more likelihood I'm going to get a game because we're playing twice a week. So you can't underestimate that. Also, when we were in the Champions League and we're selling players for 25 million or whatever, it's because those players have got Champions League experience. So other teams in Europe will look at that and go, that guy's played in the Champions League. He didn't look out of place. He had a good performance. That's the stuff they benchmark against other players in Europe when we're selling players as well. So the board's short-sightedness around Europe is just mind-boggling, because you've got the whole aspect of the money you get for getting into the competition in the first place, but also the player trading model that we're supposed to be world-class at. The only reason you get those sorts of attract those sort of high fees is because these players are playing in Europe. It's not because they're playing in Scotland. So yeah, all this saying, "Oh, I don't care about Europe," it's a total nonsense. We've got to be punching as hard and high as we can in Europe, because that has so much dictation over everything else that happens at the club. We can see that. So, you try to question what the dinosaurs on the board are seeing, because that is, it's fundamental. It's a fundamental for me. Europe's not this little plaything, oh, we'll have a wee go and a wee laugh about it. It's absolutely fundamental to our operation as a football club.
I agree with you. I've done some very basic calculations on how much we've lost by not getting into the Champions League, dropping into the Europa League. And obviously this was focused, Stephen, on the 7 from 9 failed attempts at Champions League qualification level. And it works out about £30 million you lose, all in, if you drop into where we are just now. Someone pointed out, yeah, but there's no guarantee we get in. Let's say it was 50%, so season on season, 15 million quid. And you think to yourself, well, if that was your additional investment, if you were actually working this like a proper football club, and you spent an additional 15 million quid before the Champions League qualifiers, you look at this season, it would have given us a £7 million right wing and a £7 million centre forward, Stephen, and slightly more chance of getting past Kairat. But it's the same all the time. We're in a transfer window. Anthony mentioned it first, so he's getting the blame. He mentioned recruitment. And with a few days left to go in January, we should not be focusing on players for this season. We should be focusing on players for the qualifiers next season, surely, Stephen.
But that'd be thinking ahead and having your ducks in a row, wouldn't it?
Having some kind of vision and plan.
Yeah. So you were talking about, obviously, selling players that have performed in Champions League. We're not getting close to £20 million for Nicholas Kuhn if he's not having those performances against Leipzig and Bayern Munich. We're not getting 25 million for Matt O'Reilly if he's not had these performances against Atletico Madrid at home, where he was outstanding, in Lazio and games like that. So this is where these players can show that they're able to compete against top 5 leagues and top 5 league players, so to speak. So it's a complete nonsense that, look at the drop-off from the Bayern Munich game. It was almost as if somebody flicked a switch and the team had just down tools, which we had poor performances, and then which ultimately led to losing the cup final. So I believe the longer you stay in Europe, the longer your players will stay motivated to be fighting for positions. So in regards to the money, I think in the sort of pre-2022, I think you were probably averaging a loss, maybe £20 million between Europa League and Champions League. Is probably closer to 35 now. So I believe, and this is where I gave up my season ticket, I believe that the decision to appoint Neil Lennon in 2019 ultimately cost the club somewhere between 60 and 80 million pound, because we ended up not getting through Champions League for 3 years in a row on the back of that performance. Now, I know the third year was under Ange, but he was dealing with a squad that was left by Neil Lennon that was a complete disaster. So, and like I spoke to you a few weeks ago in regards to recruitment, when we didn't sign Stephen Fletcher all the years ago, we ended up losing the next 3 league titles on the basis of one bad January window that could have got us over the line. So you have to have your ducks in a row, and this is all. I'm trying to not come out with too many cliches, but it's just so frustrating. I just don't understand what I seen all the years ago, and what you and Kevin Graham spoke about all the years ago. The press are now finally seeing, But I heard tonight on Super Scoreboard, Jim Duffy talking about, the last 2 transfer windows have brought Celtic to where they are. It's not. It's the last 10 years of transfer windows. You round it off at lunchtime today. Spending net £3 million to try and get in the Champions League, and then after you've get knocked out, you're selling your best players for £10 and £12 million, it's a complete joke. I think I put in our group chat, I don't know if Celtic are the biggest small club in the world or the smallest big club in the world. I can't figure it out.
It's so true. I mean, some of the examples I think that I shared earlier on were, just days after the qualification failure, but we're selling people like Dembele, Virgil van Dijk. This season, Adamida. So we're still doing it all these years later. You're right. It's not the last couple of windows, Stephen. It's been an issue for a long, long time. Going to bring in some of your comments before we dig right into the team. And straight off the bat, we've got Peter McGinn, who's feeling confident tonight. 2-0 Celtic. Come on, you boys in green. I would love that. I think that would be a phenomenal result this evening. And I'm with Stephen on this, all about momentum. I think momentum's huge. And whenever we're talking to anyone in maybe a Acsom live event, I always ask them the question about, playing for Celtic at such a high intensity 2-3 times a week. And they would rather that. They would rather have that, that peak fitness, Anthony, if you like, in relation to playing a full 90-minute game than just going in and having a wee training session. They feel sharper. All their senses are absolutely heightened when it's game after game. They don't really have time to labour it and think about it all that often. You get a rest day, you're in, video analysis, training session, another game. So they're like at the peak of their powers. Now, there's some players who eventually that's going to catch up with them. And there's a wee concern here for Kieran Tierney. Rivers Free says, criminal, we're starting Katie again. A big injury coming up. I'll tell you something, this season he's proved a lot of people wrong with his game time, Anthony, isn't he?
I used to hate training as a player. I just love playing games. So if I was playing twice a week, we never got to because I was amateur team, but we used to play the weekend. But if I could play twice a week and not train, I'd have taken that every day of the week. But I'm sure players like a lot of players like that as well. To answer your question about KT, yeah, I mean, again, what are our options? It's either play KT. You've either got to break up the centre half partnership and put Stales out to left back. The fact that Liam Stales has been touted as your backup left back, it had to happen against Hearts. It's just ridiculous. Or you've got to play Colby Donovan or Anthony Ralston a position. I mean, at the moment, they're your options. And thankfully, he is fit. Well, presumably he's fit and he's starting. So I mean, it's good that he is capable of playing tonight. But yeah, it's risky. I do think he might be one of the ones that will come off if we are, I would say, cruising. But if we go 2-0 up, I expect Martin O'Neill to make a few changes to sort of retain the services of some of our players who've carried a heavy workload. I mean, it'd be great if McGregor could get some time off the park tonight, but again, the likelihood of that happening is probably none in Buckley's. That's a good Aussie expression there for you. But the other thing I would say is it's really good to see that Klesha Iheanacho's back on the bench as well. So I mean, hopefully he can get a few minutes later in the game and just get some match fitness and come away just with some minutes in his legs. But fingers crossed that, like I said, we come away tonight with no more injuries. That would be fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, not much outside of the Celtic bubble has been made of the injuries, but it has affected us. And one of the players that Anthony mentions there, Stephen, Iheanacho, I was really impressed with what I've seen. I know that he's now been injured twice since he came to Celtic, but again, going back to what we were talking about there, staying sharp, playing 3 games a week, etc. That's fine if you're at that level. Iheanacho was coming in kind of cold, hadn't played a lot of football in the previous couple of years or the previous 18 months. And he's right in there, and lo and behold, he pulls a muscle. I was really impressed with Iheanacho prior to these injuries, Stephen. And I'm looking at him here in respect of us already bringing in another striker. But the big question is, do we need to bring in yet another striker? Shinya Mada's left the building. Kenny's injured. We don't have a great deal of options. Maida is not looking like a centre-forward this season. I don't know if he ever did, but he's certainly better out in the left wing. Do we bring in another striker, even though Iheanacho is back in the frame, Stephen?
I think if you could guarantee Iheanacho's fitness to the end of the season, I don't think you would have to bring in another striker. But you don't know if you're going to get 20 minutes or 20 games out of him. But for what we had seen him, he does look quality, but he's played in the English Premier League at a high level for a long time. He obviously came through the Man City. I remember going to the Man City away leg and he scored that night in the 1-1 draw. It was a good finish as well. So personally, I do think we should go for an arse striker, but the issue is the club, say we get through tonight, you're only allowed to make 3 changes to your squad, and you could argue 2 of them are going to get are already at the club with Big Tam and Arujo.
Yeah,
if that's how you pronounce it. Sorry. So they're probably going to get swapped in, and Johnson and Osmond are probably going to come out. So that leaves 1 space, but we need another centre back. We probably need a central midfielder, and we need a right winger. I reckon we need 4 players. So the only thing I'm hoping is some of the players that we're after are still playing in Europe tonight, and that's why the moves have not moved. But I'm probably living in cloud cuckoo land, thinking the board have got deals lined up after tonight.
That's ducks in a line again, Stephen. We're not kind of used to that. We wake up tomorrow and there's an unveiling of 3 new signings at Celtic Park.
That's what I think, that they'll look at. We can't register them for Europe, so why would we push the boat out? And you've already got 2 in the door, and you need a right back, and you've already brought your striker in, and I guarantee all these things are going on in the background. And I know a lot of people will be thinking, well, Europe's just a bonus, or Europe doesn't matter, and we need players for the league. But I just don't think this board think like that. They just don't. I think they I think they have a numbers game, and they try and balance books where they can. I think we'll sell. Somebody quite prominent. My money's on Hatate, but
seen his name yesterday. I think Hatate and Bernardo being linked with moves away. So do you fancy Rio for a move? Do you think?
I'm just weighing up the odds. I think he probably pissed Martin O'Neill off last week. Obviously, he didn't even get off the bench on Sunday. It's unlikely he's going to make the Japan squad. I think Maeda will want to stay because his squad, he's in the squad, but obviously doesn't want to lose and go somewhere where he ends up not playing, especially the form he's in. But at least at Celtic, he's guaranteed to start most games, if not all. I think Maeda is potentially up for going. Bernardo, I'm really frustrated with Bernardo. I just don't understand what's going on in that guy's head just now. I don't understand what's happened to him, because I was listening to Dan O'Day was on the radio tonight, and he was saying when he came to the club, Bernardo was quality, but he doesn't understand what's happened to him. So, and I see the same. So, but if Bernardo goes, it's less of a loss just based on who's getting picked every week. But I don't think Hatate would be a massive loss, just because he's so inconsistent and his form's dropped off a cliff, to be honest.
Yeah, I'm the same with Bernardo. I mean, I don't know if his best form was when he was on loan, Anthony. And I remember back to the Scottish Cup final, obviously, where Ida scores that rebound, scores the goal. And Bernardo, he just absolutely bosses it, gets the ball, thinks, I'm right, this one's on me, I'm going to make something happen, carries the ball and gets a shot in, creates the chance. But we've not really seen that. Now, yes, he's maybe been unsettled by the changes in management and everything else, but so would every player be, Anthony. I just don't think he's grasped his opportunity when given it. And I know it's difficult if you're only coming in for a game here or there, but, it'd be a shame actually to lose him, because I do think he's got bags of potential.
Yeah, he's the question around Paulo Bernardo is a frustrating one, because he's one that I like the look of. When he was on that loan spell and we signed him, I think that's a good bit of business. But I just think our development's probably failed him to a certain extent. You still have to play these guys. I think the biggest problem we've got with Paulo Bernardo is that he's been touted as the other option to Callum McGregor. And we have insisted that Callum McGregor plays every minute of every game all season. We've got to come to the fact and realization that Callum McGregor can't play 60 games an 8 out of 10. He needs a rest and a break. And because we've chopped and changed managers, successive managers aren't willing to take the risk of leaving Callum McGregor out. So that's probably, I think, had a bit of a negative impact on the development of Paulo Bernardo. yes, you could play Bernardo further up. You could play Cal McGregor further up and put Bernardo in that sort of holding role. But we just don't seem to do it. So you have to question what they're seeing on the training park. Is he a poor trainer? Is he lazy? Has he got an attitude problem? These are all the sorts of things you start thinking about. You're saying, well, Brendan Rodgers didn't fancy him. Martin O'Neill in his first stint hardly played him. Wilfred Nancy, well, let's not go there. And then Martin O'Neill's second time around, still not really getting much game time. So it's a frustration. And it would be sad to see him go, but maybe if he goes out on loan, not sold, but on loan to get some game time, he comes back a better player. I think he almost falls into the Stephen Welsh camp. He needs games to develop, and we don't have a reserve league. There's no other way to develop these players. So I just think he's just stuck in a little bit of a rut, and I don't know how we fix that. Another thing I would say is we're by my clock, we're 30 days into the transfer window. We've signed 2 players, both on loan. What do you think we're going to sign more than 2 players in 2 days? I honestly, if we get more than 2 players in now, I'd be absolutely astonished, based on the fact it's taken us this long to get 2 in so far. So I'm not really expecting any miracles on deadline day, but that's just where my optimism levels are at the moment.
We live in hope, but you're right. And I'm just watching the teams coming onto the park, and there he is. We've not mentioned him yet. I'm talking about Barkas. I don't even want to, I'm touching wood. I'm touching as much wood as I can here. I don't want to tempt fate for him to come out and have an absolutely outstanding game, because that's certainly something we didn't
like he did in 2018 for Athens.
That's right. Yeah. And you know this, Stephen, I ended up sitting next to a couple of Greek football podcasters at the end of last year. And obviously I go through everybody with a connection. I'm talking Yakimakis, Samaras, I'm talking Big Ange. And then we get to Barkas, and they just started laughing. They just started laughing. We cannot believe you paid £5 million for this guy. So there you go. We did. We absolutely did. And he's playing at Celtic Park this evening. We're just about to kick off, in actual fact. The teams are on the park. The stadium is looking pretty rammed, which is great to see. It is cold out there tonight, and I think that the team that have been selected was certainly the starting 11 that Kevin Graham, myself, and JP agreed on earlier on today. Colby Donovan at right back. I'll start with yourself, Anthony. He deserves that, doesn't he?
Yeah, I think so. He's since Martin's come back in the second time, he's not put a foot wrong when he's been called upon. I think there's, again, we're talking about development of players. This is going to develop Colby Donovan moving forward. So it makes absolute sense to play him tonight. Gives us that mobility down that right wing. So hopefully him and Yang can overlap and cause some chaos down that right hand side. And I just hope it's not transfers of Christmas past with regards to Barkas in terms of giving us pain tonight. So hopefully he just lets one in just to give us a wee start in the game. But we'll see what happens, eh?
We shall. On the right-hand side, finally, before we get into the action, Stephen Ray, Yang has just been mentioned. He's a player I had lost faith in, but he's changed my mind. And right-wingers have been spoken about and discussed quite a bit today. We've been linked to a couple, Redzik and Jed Jenis, 2 right-wingers that we've been linked with today. James A. Forrest, there's talk of a new deal for him. Yang stays though, right? He's not going to leave Celtic, is he, in this window?
If you're linked with 2 right wingers, then that says Yang leaves.
That's a bit of a concern, which I never thought I'd hear myself saying, Stephen, because as you and Martin will tell you in the comments section, I've never really been on the bus. I've never been in the Yang gang, but hopefully he will continue to prove me wrong this evening. He's had a couple of really decent performances under Martin O'Neill and one under the aforementioned Wilfred Nancy. Let's go to the action now, gentlemen. We will be back at halftime. Hopefully you enjoy the first half. Give us a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. We'll see you at halftime on A Celtic State of Mind.